about 33 years ago, after Karen and I had been married for 8 years, two little kids, we decided to go to church. We stumbled into Oak Hill 33 years ago, before this building was here, before the sanctuary was there, before the other building was there. And there was a pastor that was preaching that had jeans on and boots, and it was on his robe. And we felt real comfortable, but then we also felt somewhat convicted because the pastor, who is our age, he's actually 4 months older than me. He has more hair than I do, but he's always been 4 months older.
Everybody has more hair than you do.
But one of the things is he preached the gospel, and he continued to preach the gospel, challenged us each and every Sunday to go out and to serve others, to wash the feet of the marginalized and feed the hungry and clothe the naked, and continue to do so. A few years later, we had our co-pastor who is sick today. She is not able to make it, as John's wife, and she immediately, when she joined the church, the professionalism and the organizational skills of that position was raised tenfold.
Hey, I heard that.
But Karen also challenged us. She challenged us in her sermons and with outreach to go and to serve the needy. And that's what we're called to do, to make disciples for Christ. Afterwards, they moved to San Antonio, then Arizona, and then retired back here. And I'll let them tell a little bit of their story there. They have written and published 3 books, which are for sale out here if you want to, no pressure. They're $15 each on the honor system if you care to, and you might even get him to write in it for you, sign it, whatever. And so anyway, some of you have not had. Also, he's been a mentor to me for almost 4 decades, a spiritual mentor to Karen and I. And even more than that, and that's important, we become close personal friends, and that's a friendship that I truly, and Karen truly cherishes. So thank you for that. Some of you have met him before, so this is a reintroduction. Some of you have not had an opportunity to know him, so this is an initial introduction, but it is an honor and a privilege for me to introduce to you the Reverend Dr. John Flowers. Thank you.
I am really sad that Karen is not here. Because, yeah, I know. Stop it. And part of the problem is that that Karen and I do a lot of presentations together and the rest of it. And one of the things that invariably happens during the time Karen and I are speaking together is at least twice. Now this is during full day stuff, so it might have just been once this morning. At least twice she'll turn around, she'll look at me after something that I said, and she'll say, "That's ridiculous. Stop it and quit saying things like that." But she's not here to go ahead and do that this morning. So I want you all to feel that out. When that time comes, then you can say, "That's ridiculous. Stop it. Quit saying things like that." Because I thought you'd go ahead and do it. Here's what I had in mind. We're going to go until about 5 till. And there may be some individual conversations, but just like with your neighbor right next to you kind of stuff, it's a part of that. And then from 5 till 5 after, we'll take a break as people kind of transitioning, and maybe some 10 o'clock Sunday school people kind of wandering in, church, other folks heading on out. And then we'll finish up in plenty of time for some questions. So we pared down some stuff with this. What I'm going to do at the beginning is talk about what absolutely every church has to have to practice radical hospitality. My understanding is that's the Oak Hill goal this year, is to really get inside of radical hospitality. Now, I'll do that with some theoretical stuff, but mostly I'll do that through the narrative. So we'll do that, and we'll certainly be through with that by the end of this hour. And next hour, we're going to do some more focused stuff about ministry with the marginalized, and what it means to treat all human beings with dignity and respect, and how your ministry develops inside of that. As a part of that background, for those of you that didn't know, when we left from here, Karen and I went down to serve together at Travis Park in the middle of San Antonio. And Travis Park is the mother church of the annual conference, and it was thought to be a silk stocking church. Well, the garters have fallen quite a bit by the time we got there, and there wasn't much that was silk stocking anymore, but some folks trying to hang on to the tradition. It was transformational because we started just taking a look at who was downtown, and somebody said, well, Flowers, y'all went in there and took a silk stocking church and made it cotton socks. And so because there were, through the year, there were 50,000 people or 50,000 visits to the church from various different folks, and 98% of that were folks that were poor and marginalized. So that church experience, we were there for 12 years. That church experience, we had princes sitting next to paupers. We had six-figure people sitting next to folks that didn't even have a quarter in their pocket. So it will deal with a little bit of that later on. One of the things that we did learn in that, and then we went out to Phoenix and ended up in Tucson. What we learned at Travis Park was essential, and I wish I'd known it here, because I didn't. When I got out of seminary, and that was only about 3 years before I arrived here, I'd never gone to church before regularly in my life. And I arrived here, and some folks said, well, yeah, Flowers, you're going to be a pastor. I said, well, I've been training for it for 3 years. I can do that. And they said, what makes you think you can be a pastor? I said, well, I can drink coffee and visit with folk. I know how to do all that. And so that's my qualifications for being here. Now, Jesus whacked me on the head somewhere along the line, and we don't need to hear all about that story. But thank goodness I was not one of those folks that Jesus called. I was one of those folks where Jesus got behind me and goosed me, and but got that faithful place for me in terms of pastoral leadership. What I learned was absolutely essential, and I didn't learn it actually until I left here because of focus. I learned that focus on purpose and vision is absolutely critical. So let me ask you this, just for anybody who's got it. What's the purpose of Oak Hill Church? What's your vision? And just shout it on out. Y'all don't all have to wait.
Make disciples of Christ.
Make disciples of Christ. Anything else?
Nobody can remember the mission statement, but it's there.
Where is your mission statement?
The website.
On the website, and nobody can remember it.
Should have looked it up before you came.
Should have looked it up before you came.
We
Yeah.
said we accept all.
You accept
we
all.
advertise that we accept all.
Yeah,
We
okay.
advertise it.
Advertise it. Okay,
We're
okay.
all ministers.
Yeah, we're all ministers. Yeah, I remember that. Hand of feet. Now you're describing the church rather than repeating back to me your mission statement or your purpose or your vision. And that's all good. That's not a bad thing. But what is absolutely critical to know who you are and to practice self-definition is to get a good purpose vision statement. And the truth is, those things are never more than one sentence long. Never more than one sentence long. And invariably, Karen and I have spoke to hundreds of churches in different parts of the country, and only 2 churches have known what their purpose statement or their vision statement was. Basically, who they are. Only 2 churches have known why they exist. One of them knew why they existed. Their purpose and their vision statement was, we are the friendly church in the heart of the city. Now, what makes that unique, other than perhaps geography that puts them in central city? You need a vision and a purpose statement that goes ahead and identifies who you are in such a unique way that people will instantly know it. Couple of those. Let me give you an example. I looked it up this morning. The Church of the Resurrection in Leawood, Kansas. How many people know about that church? Oh, good. How many people have been there? Yeah, good. The Church of the Resurrection says, we're a Christian community where non-religious and nominally religious people become deeply committed Christians. The effective part of that is the non-religious people and the nominally religious people become committed Christians. Now, what's essential in that is as you understand their purpose, then you can begin to understand everything they do in context. Looking at Glide Memorial out in San Francisco. How many of you people have been to Glide? Been to Glide? You know what's going on there? Just a wild, crazy place. A mother church for us when we were at Travis Park. Glide's mission statement is justice, love, spirituality. Every single person inside of Glide who's a member of Glide can tell you what their vision statement is. Justice, love, and spirituality. I'm not a member there, or else I'd have those three things memorized. So that gives them an identity, especially in the context of the ministry with the poor, that is unshakable, and everybody can repeat it. At Travis Park, we worked really hard for a year or so to try to come up with a purpose and a vision. And here it was, Travis Park, unconditional love and justice in action. Unconditional love and justice in action. So those are three that really work. What I implore you to do here at Oak Hill is find one that really, really works. And I tell you, you can. Does anybody know what the vision purpose statement is of the United Methodist denomination? Our whole denomination has a vision and a purpose. You can't. Although I'm pleased that you know it. There's lots of clergy that have no idea. Does anybody other than clergy know what the vision and purpose statement is for the United Methodist Church? Yeah, he did. He got half of it. The vision purpose statement of the United Methodist Church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Now, you have a couple of roads you can go here. One road can be, we're going to go ahead and we're going to find our own mission statement that is us. Or you can simply do the mission statement of the denomination, which is already pretty clear. Make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. One does not go without the other, or else you can have people that are really pursuing piety to the exclusion of human relationships and social justice. So what you're talking about is personal piety and social justice. You're talking about communal piety and social justice. But you are talking about those two together. Matters not, John Wesley would say, if you have a high sense of personal piety and you're not affecting the poor and the marginalized inside of your community. And it matters not really if you're a big transformer, like a lot of us good liberal knee-jerk Christians are, and in doing social justice work, but we're like, we have no idea why we're doing it, other than just being nice. I tell you what, I can't stand that bumper sticker that says random acts of kindness. Practice random acts of kindness. Don't be random. Know why you're doing it. And I would be practicing acts of kindness, not randomly, but only because Jesus told me to. And that's a big part of what it means for me to be a deep disciple for the transformation of the world. Is I'm just doing the stuff that Jesus told me to do. When we were down in San Antonio, then we had a billboard that we put up on the freeway because I can't overemphasize marketing and how powerful that is in getting the word out of who you are. But we had a billboard put up that said, what is it? It says, hell and judgment not included. And it had a circle with a line through it. Hell and judgment not included. Some pastor from the city calls me up and he wants to know, because this, of course, is tied into our unconditional love and justice in action. He calls me up. He says, what do you mean by that billboard? I said, well, just what it says. Hell and judgment not included. We don't have that here. And he says, Don't you know that if you go ahead and preach that without the judgment of God, then better an anvil tied around your neck and thrown in the deepest water. And he started quoting the scripture that I remembered, but I couldn't really remember where it was, but it's in there somewhere, about that kind of, everybody drowning because they got some kind of anvil around their neck, and, you're really sending them straight to hell. And I said, well, we have hell and judgment not included here. And by the way, the Pope agrees with us. Did you see that not too long ago? So he says, how can you do that? I said, I'll tell you what. Here's what I do. I'm just really basic. I look at the Gospels and I see all the things that Jesus tells me to do. And that's like a 60-hour week for me. In my work, I'm after that. I really go 24/7 on that. I'm trying to do everything that Jesus tells me to do. And I don't have any time left over for hell and judgment. I don't really have any time. I said, and let me tell you something else. You preach hell and judgment, don't you? He says, well, I certainly do. I said, I knew that, so I knew you had that covered. We don't have to do that. Because you're on top of that. You got a market with that. And good for you. Good for you. So you see what I'm saying? The purpose and vision statement was unconditional love and justice in action. And by the way, that in action was one that we really came back to after we adopted the first part of it. They said, it doesn't make any difference unless you talk about it in action, unless you do it. Because there's way too many churches. There's a couple of them here in the city that go ahead and they've got rainbows everywhere and everybody's accepted and it's just wonderful and so on and so forth. But they don't do anything with it. They'll sit around. I went to one Sunday school class in a major Methodist church here in town. And they were talking about that movie with that had LBJ in it, and it was about LBJ, I think, and it had some stuff from Martin Luther King Jr. in there, and so on and so forth. They went around and they were talking all about. Well, some people wanted to say, well, yes, I knew LBJ and I knew their family, and so it was an older adult class. And so they went and talked all that stuff about that. And then they talked about racism and how racism had been a scourge in our culture, a scourge on who we were as people, and how it had decimated morality and ethical behavior. And they talked all about that. And at the end, I left, and it was with Karen. I said, I'm never going to go back there again. She says, well, why not? They talked about all this stuff. I said, yeah, they talked about it. But nobody got up there and said, well, racism, I've experienced racism in my own heart when this happened. Or I saw racism happening here, and I was fed up, and so that called me into this action or that. Nobody talked about a personal identification. It was all the theoretical understanding about what's wrong with our culture, and not one damn person stood up and said how they were going to be a part of the solution and do something that was action-filled. Didn't happen. We got too many churches that are putting out prophetic words, and they're not doing anything. Oak Hill needs to be the church that does something. Just really does something. So, vision and purpose, and that's a quick synopsis, but no, it's critical to hang on to vision and purpose. And until you get your own, and you can tweak it in the way that you want, and I urge you to get into that conversational process and move to that, then take the denominations, vision and purpose. Deep disciples, making new disciples of Jesus for the transformation of the world. The truth is, and it's got to be disciples for Jesus. We get in too much trouble when we're talking about transforming the world because of God's love. God's love, and we transform the world. No, that doesn't work. Doesn't work. Because you need something that is clearly identified as Jesus-driven. Because we believed in Jesus as Lord. I served on the board of a seminary in California. Okay, yeah, hot tubs, margaritas, and all the rest of that. But here I am on a board of a seminary in California, and they were doing their mission statement because they were coming up for their accreditation stuff. So they were, it was a working document, but when they present to a board a working document, that basically means it's done. And they wanted that rubber stamp to come slamming down on that thing. I looked at that statement of faith and who they were, and Jesus never appeared. Never appeared. The word Jesus was nowhere to be found in that. And I went, question. I said, we are a Christian seminary. This is a United Methodist seminary. Jesus doesn't appear anywhere here. I think we need to rework this statement to find some place where we acknowledge Jesus as Lord and Savior. And several folks spoke up there and said, no, I will not be a part of the seminary that does that. I said, how come? And they said, all of the stuff I have in my past, all the people that came with the rigid fundamentalism and Jesus, and we got to get completely away from that because all the memories and the destruction that happened back then. Now, I know the destruction that happened with deeply conservative, rigid, fundamentalist Christians. I do know that. And it's pretty unhealthy stuff, and it doesn't work. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And what distinguishes this seminary? This seminary had Muslims that were teaching, had our Hebrew brothers and sisters that were teaching, had Buddhists that were teaching, all in the faculty. And they said, we can't put Jesus in our mission statement because that will be offensive to them. I said, I don't think so. And they said, well, why do you not think so? And I turned to the Muslim. I said, what do you need most from Christians when we get together? And she said, I need Christians to understand who they are. And if they understand who they are, it's not offensive to me. I know who I am, and I know who Muhammad is. And I need Christians to know who Jesus is. And if we understand who we are, if we practice out of our self-definition, then we're not offending somebody else. We're not being exclusive. We're just saying that when we hand a piece of bread, brother to sister, we hand out a piece of bread. They say, why do you do that? And we say, because Jesus calls me to do it. And they say, well, I'm Muslim. And I say, well, Muhammad may have called you to do that too. But I know that for me, it's Jesus called me to do that. So I'm not sitting there and saying, mine is valued more than yours. I'm simply saying, this is my identity. This is who I am. So I really want you, and that's a lot longer conversation than I was just hammering right there. I really want you to understand who you are. And Jesus has to be a part of that. And thank God our denomination said, make disciples of Jesus for the transformation of the world. Let's get Jesus back in it. And let's quit talking as much about the love of God. And talk, and hear me. This is one of those times where Karen would say, stop it, John. Stop saying that. But hear it through the appropriate filters. And you can fuss with me later. I promise. I can handle it. But let's not talk about the love of God as much as we talk about following Jesus. There's a little difference. Now, we have to be sure, we have a long road to go to reclaim that language. They stole evangelism from us. They stole evangelical from us. I want you all to be evangelicals, but I don't want you to be evangelicals in the way that your mind's telling you've heard that word over the last 30 years. I want you all to be evangelicals because, really, we're selling the best stuff in the world. To follow Jesus is just an incredible thing. And it's the greatest product there ever was. Are we good? Do we understand that? Vision and purpose. Get it done. Keep the denomination's vision and purpose if you're not ready to articulate all of your own yet. But get some people talking about what is uniquely Oak Hill here. And harken back to your DNA. One of the things about Travis Park was and this was the primary selling point for having a homeless ministry. Ministry with the poor and marginalized folks. Like, you all are going to think that this is crazy, but when we had tons of homeless people flooding the church, that made some people uncomfortable. I know that sounds nuts, but it made some people uncomfortable. And so I said, well, these folks have no place to go. And they said, yes, but this is our church. And I said, well, you remember back in World War II? Which they could. And I said, you remember back in World War II? You remember who Travis Park was and who they opened up their doors to? And they said, yeah, the Japanese. So in Travis Park, they opened up their doors and became sanctuary for folks, the Japanese, who otherwise would have been sent to camps out in West Texas and California. But they went ahead and were sanctuary for the Japanese people so that they wouldn't be oppressed. I said, you're offering a open door for the marginalized in the same way that you did back in World War II. And they went, oh yeah, that's who we are, isn't it? That's who we are. One of the things that I do know is as a part, and I'm not recommending that you sell this. I'm really not. But one of the things that I do know is almost every place I've gone to, I spoke with folks and told them that the story at Oak Hill when we were sitting around after the first building was built, and they said, who are we going to give a key to? And I said, well, let's just give it to everybody, all the members. And they said, you didn't. I said, yeah. And they said, they would never practice that, would they? I said, they still do. And they said, well, it's a symbol of some sort, isn't it? They were, kind of like key to the city. So I said, no, it really works. You are the only church in Christendom that does that. The only church in Christendom that does it. Now, think about that when you're thinking about your DNA and who you are. Think about the birthplace in a bar and accepting everybody just as they are. When people we used to sit down in those chairs, and if they hadn't cleaned the night before, I sat in a big old pile of beer on the chair. Think about who you are and where you came from, and think about the lofty vision of what that was, and see if you can incorporate that, because that's a part of your DNA. And that key thing, I'm telling you what, that'll just blow people's minds. And it has all throughout the country. Okay, let's get on. I need to get moving. Let's see, 3. What is our purpose and mission? Now, here's the second thing. You get a hammer on this, what your purpose and your mission is, and then practice alignment and identity. Identity has to do with your self-definition, who you see yourself to be, and that's Jesus, people, following Jesus. And whether or not you have hell and judgment, you need to pack into that, then you can have a conversation. I'll tell you who that pastor was that called me, and you can have a lively conversation with him. But get your identity solid with your vision and your purpose, and then practice alignment. Alignment looks like this. Single thing you do. Let's take the alignment to the vision of the denomination. If you say, this is who we are, to make disciples of Jesus for the transformation of the world, every single thing you do has to fall into alignment with that. If it doesn't fall into alignment with that, then it may be a wonderful thing to do. But it's not your purpose. Do you hear? You're really narrowing it down. You want to get stuff that is in alignment with your purpose. Therefore, somebody says, well, we're going to have a cupcake sale. A cupcake sale. I love cupcakes. Look at this. I love cupcakes. I know all about cupcakes. I think they're wonderful things. And I sit there and I said, okay, how are you going to bring the cupcake sale in alignment with make disciples of Jesus for the transformation of the world? How are you going to do that? And they had given some thought around the circle and saying, well, okay, then I am going to go to my neighbor and I'm going to say, hey, look, our church, the United Methodist Church is having a cupcake sale. Would you be willing to bake a dozen cupcakes to have it in the sale? And I said, good. That's the first step to what it means to make a disciple. And so, see, the cupcake sale becomes a part of the vision and the purpose of the church. And at Travis Park, one of the things that inspired the meal, and we got to the place where we serve 50,000 meals a year there. And by the way, please don't be overwhelmed by scope. But let me be better here. You are right inside of your doors every Sunday morning serving food. I actually got some of it. I kind of thought maybe that was going on, so I went ahead and got a couple tacos this morning. Don't tell Karen. I got the ones with the chorizo. Don't tell her. But I'll go in there and I'm looking around and I'm saying, okay, now how do you take feeding people on Sunday morning to be a part of making disciples of Jesus for the transformation of the world? Well, you really kind of feeding each other. You're really kind of saying, gee, it's glad to be with you. I love hanging out with you. And so everybody who is deeply connected and already there is eating the food. I said, how can you take that? And let me ask you, how can you take your Sunday morning breakfast and bring it in alignment with the vision and purpose of the church to make disciples of Jesus for the transformation of the world? How can you do that? Yes, sir.
Me. Sign on to 90 saying breakfast tacos, come in and have breakfast with us.
Oh, I like that.
That'd be a good way. That'd be a good way. That's excellent. Any other ideas? Here, yeah.
This came from you, so I'm going to give you back the credit. But John talked about getting a food truck and put Oak Hill United Methodist Church on it and put it across the street or at ACC or where people are and feed them there.
You got, I'm talking about across the street. Have you look at the profile of folks who are students at Austin Community College? Look at their profile. And look at the demographics on that. How much money do they have? How many single moms are there? How many second career people? How many people struggling in hospitality industry jobs are going to just taking a couple of courses each semester, and they're doing it right across the street here. And for folks who are living on the margins or living real skinny, then you to go ahead and have a free meal or two really helps you stretch that budget. What would it be like if you had a food truck from Oak Hill Church? It was right across the street, and during the times where they had the noontime traffic with Austin Community College over there, what kind of conversations could you get into? You could get into tons of conversations that had to do with disciple making, and for that was a part of the transformation of the world. What would it be? You got a possibility, an intro to disciples, nominally churched or non-churched people, and the transformation is you've had some impact on their budget because you're feeding them and you're having conversation. Here's another way that you could do something with the breakfast right over there. Churches used to have this kind of thing to where, I have several things that okay. All right, imagine Karen's here and saying, stop it, John, don't say stuff like that. There used to be a program called Christian Friendly. I meant just everybody was smiling and all that. There was no faith exchange at all. It was just Christian friendly. They were doing it. And so, I just don't have a large regard for that. And I got indicted for that myself. Because I'm downstairs, and I told a couple of folks that I'm downstairs at Travis Park. We're serving breakfast to the homeless. And as we're serving breakfast, they said, well, how many people come to church at 11 o'clock after breakfast? And it was right there in our fellowship hall. It's underground there in Travis Park. I said, oh, we got a few, but not many. And I'm thinking, what are they? That's the hard questions. And these are resource people coming from California. And I really want to impress them, but this is not impressive. And I said, well, not many. And this was just a really large, wonderful woman. God, she commanded a presence, wearing a dashiki. And, she was just everything you'd imagine about just powerful human being. And she said, well, why aren't they coming? I said, I don't know. She said, well, what do you do to get them there? And I said, well, I invite them. She said, well, tell me how you do it. And I said, I go ahead and I invite them. And I say, hey, we're having worship. here in 15 minutes, and it'll be in the worship center upstairs, and I'd just really love it if you come. It'd be nice. And she said, oh, God, stop it. That doesn't work. I said, what do you want me to do? And she said, I'll show you. She goes over to one of the guys that's having breakfast, that's eating. And she goes over there and she says, what's your name? And he says, Danny. And she says, do you know this guy right here? And he says, well, yeah, he's a pastor and of this church. She said, and did you know that in just 15 minutes he's going to be in worship upstairs? And he said, well, no, I didn't know that. And he said, well, he is. Now, let me tell you something. You need to go with him to worship. And the reason you need to be in worship is because he needs you there. He needs you there. She said, I don't know whether you need to be there or not. I really don't. But that doesn't matter. He needs you. And this church is doing what it does because they care and give a damn about who you are. They love you. So will you today, right now, will you go with him to worship?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. That's right. That's exactly right. Now, we call that aggressive pursuit. Now, everybody is not really ready for that. Okay, they're not all ready for that. But what we can do is find some kind of aggressive pursuit experience, or it's a continuum. Okay, here's invitation over here, and it's pretty passive and leaning back. And here's aggressive pursuit, and it's pretty in your face and leaning forward. Find someplace on the continuum. But you have a meal there every Sunday. Say, hey, come break bread with me. I don't have anybody to eat with me this morning. I need to have you sit there with me and eat. And I'm going up to eat at church. Come on, that won't kill you. Come on, I don't know whether you need to be at the church. I don't know whether you're hungry or not. But I'm hungry and I really want to be with you. Come with me doing it. And there you go. Do you see? Because we can't just practice invitation anymore. We've had that stuff to where we practice invitation, and we've even done it when we're teaching class. What happens when we're teaching class? Well, if it's not Revelation and it's about the Bible, then the sign-ups just really trickle in, and they're not real strong. But if you go ahead and look at most churches, how do they advertise their teaching class? They advertise by putting it in the bulletin. Let's put a name in the newsletter. Let's do that. And the truth is, there's no invitation there that comes all the way to aggressive pursuit. It doesn't even most of the time go to invitation. All you're doing is reading something in a paper. We don't have teachers of anything at the churches that I've served. I'm talking like it's current events. I don't serve churches anymore. Churches should not have any teachers that won't recruit their own and practice aggressive pursuit to have somebody to be a part of the class. We have to, and let me tell you a story about that. There are, I'm watching it. There are, when we were in Phoenix, we had a cup of coffee with this guy who was the pastor of the large Episcopal church in town. It was a downtown temple church, and we talked to him because he was in charge of clergy and getting clergy to leadership for their diocese or whatever. And so we said, well, we're struggling. He said, well, we're in a different place with that. He says, we refuse to ordain any clergy anymore that don't have the gift of gathering. And Karen says, well, I've read the epistles. I'm looking at Paul's writings, and I looked that up, and I'm not real sure. I have a good memory of that, but I'm not real sure I see the gift of gathering anywhere in Paul's epistles where he talks about gifts. And he says, oh, it's not in the Bible. We're Episcopalians. We don't care if it's in the Bible or not. And so Karen says, okay, good. Then what is the gift of gathering? He said, we don't ordain any clergy that folks don't want to hang with. The gift of gathering means you are attractive enough as a human being that people want to hang out with you. That's what it really means. And now throughout United Methodism, the gift of gathering has not been a requirement for ordination. So we get some major eggheads and some major people who are brilliant people, but they don't have the gift of gathering. People don't want to hang. And not only that, let's compound that by the only advertisement they have for what's going on is in the bulletin and in the newsletter. That doesn't work, people. If you want to energize a church, if you want to build Christian disciples, you want more participation, you're interested in the world's transformation through Jesus, you've got to go ahead and practice some recruitment and even aggressive pursuit of people to be a part of that. I want to say that no small group is going to be successful unless you have a gift of gathering, people that other folks like to hang with. Who are some of the folks you know in Oak Hill Church that have the gift of gathering?
This guy.
Yeah, two people pointing at him, and of course I had that built in because, and then Karen said, "No, you can't say that to people. You can't say that." I said, "Why not?" And they said, "Well, it's just too awkward if you go ahead and say it." So I said, "Well, I'll get everybody else to say it." So yeah, Don Rentz has the gift of gathering. He also knows a bit about aggressive pursuit, as some of you have experienced. You got to have folks like that unencumbered with administrative loads and stuff to where they can go out and grab the populace and get them together and lead them in terms of that. Actually, let me tell you this. One of the things, and Karen pointed this out, this is Karen's voice, because she's not here. I said, very few of our clergy have the gift of gathering. I said, yeah, that's terrible. She said, no, it's not as good. I said, why? And she said, if you have a clergy person that has a profound gift of gathering, then you have the liability of creating a pastor-centered church. And that's not good. That is not good. You want to have a church that has sustainability. And the church's sustainability is built on picking out all the folks who really have the gift of gathering and will come and hang out with the people that and recruit other people and bring them on in. I said, you're right. She says, of course I am. I'm always right. So, the gift of gathering. So, alignment, you see, we're wanting to align everything you do. At Travis Park Church, they had a white glove kind of Christmas dinner for all the Travis Park members. And I went down there and I said, they had the tablecloths and they had the silverware and they had punch bowls, with the crystal and, it made me ill. Anyway, they had all of that. But I have issues with my mother on that, and so I'll deal with that later on. But they had all of that. And when we began to practice alignment, and I said, well, how about we have other people come in here and eat with us? And so that was pretty painful in and of itself. There will be pushback when you really start practicing alignment. They wanted us, the clergy leadership, to do some things that we said, we don't mind you doing it. That's a great thing. We know you have a strong group. It's wonderful that you enjoy being together, but that's not in alignment with our purpose. We're going to go ahead and give all of our energy to our purpose and our mission, and we're going to be in alignment with that. So keep on, but we're not going to be a part of that. So that's a great way to make your choices too, by the way. You're trying to choose what makes a difference in church and what doesn't, then do it by alignment. A couple other things. How are we different from a social service agency? I'm not going to spend any time with that. We've got Jesus, and we only do it because of Jesus. Otherwise, then, even the YMCA is a YMCA, and Jesus doesn't show up very often. Not in articulated, driven, purpose-driven form. It's been diluted on out. So we're not a social service agency. We're driven by Jesus. One of the things that we did was we worked with a group of churches at Travis Park where Travis Park was one of them, had CAM ministries or something that was a downtown ministry where several churches got together. Well, because there was some Muslim and some Jewish folks and all, great people, in order not to offend anybody, then they got faith language out of all that they did. And what happened was they turned into their own social service agency. Social service agencies are concerned about what are your numbers, and how many people have you served, and what have you done for. They would have somebody would come by wanting some help with their electricity. They had an electric bill of $125, and the CAM would give them $20 and tell them, well, we'll get you started, and you go around and you find other churches that'll go ahead and make up the difference. And they would report at the end of the year that they helped 3,500 people with their utilities. Well, they gave them $20 on a $125 bill, and so that didn't help. That didn't tell anybody, but they report a good number. And that's what social service agencies do. They are numbers. We had, and this is the last before we're going to take a break. We had a physician who was in charge of the county health agency to serve all of the desperately poor people in the county. And he came in there and he says, "John, I know that Travis Park has a clinic, medical clinic." He said, "We would like to offer our expertise and run your medical clinic." I said, here's the deal. We run our medical clinic under a wholeness wellness model. You got that down? I know that. Wholeness and wellness, wholeness. And they said, really? And I said, yes. And that means that we are in a place to where the physicians who are here expect to learn as much and be educated as much and spend time with the people that come through here as they expect to dispense their expertise. We only want doctors here that will go ahead and learn from the people, from the poor, learn from them. He was uncomfortable with that, but he was willing to continue the conversation. But 2 months later, he said, why is it that you serve more people on Sunday morning than we do all during the week? And we have a staff of doctors. There's 6 or 7 doctors, and you have 1 or 2. And I said, well, I tell you what. How about this? How about we go ask those folks who are coming to the clinic? Why do they come to our clinic for 3 hours on Sunday morning? And there's more of them than show up all during the week for you. I said, I can't answer that. Let's go ask them. So we went downstairs during the breakfast, 150 men and women down there, desperately poor. Not all of them homeless, but about half of them homeless. And said, well, Doc here's come from the clinic over there. Do you know that clinic? And he asked me, and I told him about the question. I said, I want to hear from you. And we had a couple of responses that were like softball, I don't want to hurt their feelings kind of response. And the last one we heard from, guy came up there and he says, it's because here we have a name and there we have a number. They know our name here. You see, it wasn't about delivering medical care. There's lots of places where people can get medical care. But only in the Church of Jesus Christ, for the transformation of the world, are they committed to knowing your name. All right, I got 3 minutes. One last other thing. Down there at... there was somebody that came up to me and said, John, I don't know, the ministry with poor and marginalized, I love that. That's wonderful. But I don't really know what to do with some of that. I don't know how to interact. We've got a guy that sits in the front of my building, my office building, guitar man, and I don't know how to interact with him. I don't know what to do with him. I said, well, the first thing you could do is, I'm betting you his name is not Guitar Man. Well, he always has a guitar. That's not his name. Why don't you ask him his name? Why don't you, and this is a conversation that is transferable, not to the desperately poor homeless, but for all folks who experience on the margin. What is your name? Where do you live? Or with a homeless friend, where did you spend the night last night? Are you in touch with your family? Do they live here? Do they know what's going on with you? Do you miss them? When's the last time you saw them? Have you talked to them on the phone? Tell me more about how long have you been homeless or couch sitting, and how long have you lived in this area, and what do you do during the day? I said it's just regular human being conversations. So it is vitally important that with ministry to the marginalized, you know people's names. Start with their name and hear their story. Because the narrative, as you listen to people's story, will be the basis for building a disciple of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. You're already transforming the world because somebody knows their name that didn't give a flying flip just about a day before that. Do you hear the power of that? It's amazing. So anyway, I'm done for now. We'll do some more specific stuff after this, but I'll tell you what, we're gonna take a 7-minute break, which I always say when I mean 10 minutes, because if I get you all to commit to 7 minutes, you'll give me 10, okay? And so we're going to take a 7-minute break and then be back here, okay? Stand up, stretch. One of the things that I want you to know is as you move about new journey in terms of, here we go. As you move about a new journey in seeing about vision and seeing about your purpose, and then you'll get all kinds of questions like, what makes a member? What makes a good member? Well, and what makes a good church officer? Elected church official. And one of the things we said was, they have to attend regularly. And, yeah. Well, think about it. Think about it. Why in the world are you electing people to your leadership that don't attend regularly? Why? You know, that's the basic way that you claim your investment in the organization, is you attend regularly. So people came along and they say, okay, attend regularly. All right, we'll do that. What's regularly? And then we had to struggle through all of the minimum expectation. And you get to, I said, I told them, regularly means that if you're not sick or out of town, you're here. That's what regularly means. Well, John, you can't be judgmental. I said, no, time out. I'm not doing any of that stuff. All I'm saying is the expectation that we have with each other. We have with each other that if you're not sick or out of town, you'll be here. And that's what it means to be regularly. Now, if you can't do that, then don't say yes to a leadership position. All right, just don't. It fits, that's in alignment with core values. And so this book has it in the back, in the appendix, some ways to talk about core values, some ways to talk about leadership expectation. We had a chairperson of the finance committee at First Methodist Phoenix that never gave one thin dime to the church. And nobody thought that was weird. I said, that ain't happening. We're not having them again. We're just not doing it. And so our leadership committee became more than a nominating committee. It wasn't a nominating committee anymore. It was talking about real leadership and what constituted real leadership. So we had all kinds of expectation around leaders. And the truth is, being a member is not being a leader. Being a leader is a different level of what it means to be a part of a church. Lots more to talk about that. We've done 2-day stuff on that. But just know you've got some intriguing stuff at the back of 10 Temptations to read about. It's in the appendix about leadership stuff. So I got to move on. And I told a couple of people this before, and so bear with me. The most interesting worship experience I had at Travis Park was when I was preaching on full inclusion, having to do with our gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer. Yeah, we got all 5. I want to make sure I had them all in there. And I'm not minimizing. I'm just old, and so I just forgot them all. So I was, We're talking about full inclusion because, doggone it, I'm looking around. Jesus was into full inclusion. So anyway, I had one of our guys that was desperately poor. That and I'm just going to report what happened in church. That's bullshit. Right in the middle of the sermon, and I'm going. He said, "That's not in the Bible." And I said, "Well, now hold on, brother. Let's talk." So I came down out of the pulpit, came down there next to him, and I said, "Listen, I want to treat your concern with dignity and respect. I truly do, and I know that there are differences on this inside of our denomination, and so I want to honor that. But I can't really do this while I'm conducting worship. I need to finish up worship, but I promise you, if you wait just right outside after the service, I will give you all the time you need, and I will listen, and we'll wrestle together in the Spirit of Jesus Christ, just kind of see where that takes us." He said, "I'm not staying for that." And he got up and he stormed out. Now, when he initially said that, right before I got to him, I felt some guys like Maroney and Byron like, they were coming. They were gonna save the situation. I said, no, just so I did that. And I didn't really even finish much of the sermon. I mean, there really wasn't much need anymore after that. It was kind of like when the cross fell down over here. What are you going to do? You're going to keep preaching the manuscript you got it? No. So when I go ahead and I finish up and I'm greeting people at the door, and one of the women came through, just really faithful, deep disciple, wonderful, wonderful lady. She said, "I don't believe I'm ever going to remember anything you said today, but I will never forget what you did, treating that man with dignity and respect."
Wow.
And I said, that's the church. That's the church. So after that experience, what we did was we didn't go out and hire a security guard. And what we did was we had about 5 or 6, and I don't, one of the good things about talking about these things is you never know what other people are doing. So when you come in there and say that, but we got 5 or 6 people who agreed to be behavioral specialists. That would be their ministry. Because we had a lot of people who were not able to practice self-control, were not able to self-regulate. Now, mind you, many of the people are on the streets or desperately poor because they can't self-regulate. That can be as simple as getting to work on time, and they just can't get to work on time. Or that can be kind of, like an autism thing. That can be somewhere on the community. Lots of different reasons why people can't self-regulate. We had 5 or 6 guys that were in agreement to be behavioral specialists. And what we would do is we would watch the congregation. And when somebody came in who had particular, and it wasn't all people from the streets. We had one lady that always dressed in yellow and had a cane, and she'd hit people if they were in her pew and tell them to move, and use the N-word pretty liberally for people around her. And so we had our behavioral specialists that were committed to the ministry of giving up their time to focus with God and Jesus and worship for that morning, and they would sit next to those folks who were not able to self-regulate. And they would actually go in there, and they could feel them getting straight up, and they go, hey, Gertrude, he'll be okay. He'll be all right. And if Gertrude just couldn't do it, say, Gertrude, come on, let's go out during the offering. Then let's sit on the outside. Let's talk a little bit about that. They were just committing to a ministry of teaching self-regulation and de-escalation of behaviors. You need that. If you're going to be opening yourself up to being fully inclusive, then you're going to have some folks amongst the population that don't know how to self-regulate. It's not a time to build fences and pull out guns and have pepper spray and uniformed police area. It's not a time to do that. It's a time to find your people that are committed to doing behavioral modification with those who can't self-regulate. Do you get what I'm saying? Because that's really what Jesus would do. Jesus did behavioral work with folks that were unable to self-regulate. He did it all the time. You know, he did, there he is on the side of the hill, and the demons are talking to him, and casts out the demons, and they go into the pigs. Now, why did they have a herd of pigs in a predominantly Jewish area? I'm not real sure. But anyway, sends them all to drink. But self-regulation was a problem back in biblical times, and Jesus had some other way besides law enforcement to deal with that. I'm just food for thought. Okay, let's move on. The heart of the matter basically says it's not necessarily homeless folks. And I'm not too sure, given your geography and your burp of place and history here in Oak Hill, that homelessness is what you need to really pay attention to. But it is
there's actually several communities around here, very close.
So it could be.
Yeah.
Could be. All right, could be. But it's not limited to that.
Exactly.
Okay? And and everybody is not going to be up for ministry with the same folks who live on the margins. And there's lots of different people that live on the margins. In the Not Just a One Night Stand on pages 63 and 64, there is a list of folks, and I want you to create your own list. Add to, subtract from. Ready for this? Immigrants, those who suffer from mental illness. These are all people who are at times not treated with dignity and respect. Okay, I got it. Chronic street people, situationally homeless, those who suffer from chemical abuse, those who suffer from alcohol abuse, those who have been in prison, divorced persons, single persons, children who've been sexually abused, children in special education classes, African Americans, Latinos, Latinas, Arab Americans, Muslims, those persons confined to a wheelchair or with other disabilities or physical challenges, prostitutes, high school dropouts, minimum wage it keeps on going. Just know there's lots of people that experience and live on the margins. The last part of this, we're just going to be talking about ministry with them. And you've got to decide, and please, don't oversubscribe. Find two or three profiles or demographics, 2 or 3 that you can do. Don't take the whole list there. Just get 2 or 3 that make the most sense for you. That you have people that God has called you to be excited about. Divorced persons. Sometimes we don't even think about that as marginalized, but they sure can be. When we had a Sunday school class in one church I served with, the name of it was the Pairs and Spares. Wouldn't it be great to be a spare? Anyway, so pick the marginalized population that makes the most sense for you, but pick some. Pick some. You hear what I'm saying? All right, let's go on to the next one. This is my second slide, by the way, and I'm going to. Drive-by charity. We'd have people come back from a 1-week experience, and they'd say, how was your experience? We learned how fortunate we are because there's desperate poverty somewhere else, and we did a vacation Bible school, and we built a ramp. Check that box off. I got 51 weeks of the year where I can be me and do stuff for me. No, it's not that bad. And Karen would again say, stop it, John, stop it. I don't mean that. But drive-by charity means that you get into an intensive charity experience and it's over. It's gone. And beware of drive-by charity. Beware of that. And try not to be so self-satisfied with what you've done in 1 week. Somebody told me, says, John, you can't change around worship services because my kids go to Sunday school while I'm in worship, and that schedule works for us. So you can't do that. You can't have Sunday school in the middle of worship before then Sunday school, and then worship after that. I said, well, why not? And he says, I don't have 2 hours to give to the church every week. What are you asking? I said, that's funny. You don't have 2 hours. But when I'm reading the scripture, Jesus asked for your whole life, your entire life. And you're telling me you can't do 2 hours? Karen said, John, learn a new way to say these things. Drive-by charity. You did 1 week. You did great with drive-by charity. You did great for that 1 week. Had a deeply meaningful time. It changed your life forever. Okay, what are you going to do the other 51 weeks of the year? Missional trips and personal transformation. Yeah, you're hearing what I'm saying. Now, those are great things. Those are disciple-making things. Let's just not train our teenagers to 1 week and we've checked the box. Let's just not do that. Next slide. Okay, this is about finding the folks that are living on the margins and making some intervention with it. And get outside the box with that. Get outside the box. And please, and here it is. And I know the report could happen back in his home when he gets home, but don't count on the United Methodist Connectional System for that. God knows, don't do it. Appalachian Project is fine, but one of the things that was just really transformative here in this place was when this church went together without any direction from the larger denominational sources, and we went to Ciudad Valles, and we went down there. Now, still, I was learning about drive-by charity and stuff, but we went down to Ciudad Valles and built a church in Ciudad Valles, and we filled it up. It was 11, 12-hour trip. We were all on one bus, and everybody went. We'll never forget it. But we didn't ask for denominational direction on that. We weren't a part of a district group or a conference group or any of the rest of that kind of stuff. We just decided there's a need. We're going and we're going to do it. District and conference resources are great, but sometimes they can get in the way, okay? Because it takes too much time to go through all of the bureaucratic whatever. So, recognize and identifying the needs in the community and think outside the box, like food trucks over there. You got a relationship, Don was telling me, with a community. Tell me about that.
Foundation Communities, which is low-income housing.
Okay, low-income housing. What I want you to do is, as you pursue that, move further, then pursue relationships. And do not do that like a social service model. Do not do it like that. Pursue relationships and find out who's in there. One of the things is if you have subsidized housing, some folks here in this church really know how to do cooking, really cook well, bake well. You can do life skills kind of stuff with folks from that place. You could, it'd be hard to do that out of a food truck, but if there was some way that you could work transportation, and there's always folks at church, if you got some sort of van access or somebody can carry folks, there's always folks that say, I don't want to do all of the building of relationships with the people, but I can drive and I can bring them back and forth. In the homeless ministry at Travis Park Church, 75-80% of the people were involved in the homeless ministry, but only about 10% of those folks were actually involved in the deep building one-on-one relationships. Because there are a lot of supportive giver people in the world that don't particularly feel called by God or have the inclination to do the thing in terms of what it means to build relationships. So you could, life skills stuff, just kind of figure it out. Who in that place is looking for a job? I would collect up and know inside the congregation what everybody did. And if somebody had a service industry company of some sort, then I would figure out some way that through the sponsorship of the church and some oversight that people could have chances at jobs that they might not otherwise have. There's some nurses' aides that might be just being called by God right now to be nurses' aides in a assisted living situation. You never know. Just find out what everybody here does, and then know who might have room for certain. We would have elderly folks who needed somebody to stop by their house, one morning a week or 3 or 4 mornings a week. And what you do is you have somebody in ministry who has some flexibility of time who can go with them for the first 2 or 3 weeks so that you can see how they operate and so that folks develop more of a comfort with it. It's an overall, so think and dream about how you can connect with people and build those relationships. We're practicing horizontal relationships, not hierarchical relationships. Equity of power is absolutely critical for folks who are on the margins. Homeless folks and desperately poor folks can smell a do-gooder from a mile away, and I mean they just know it's coming, and I would hear city councilmen, and I go in there and I fuss at them big time. And, well, we're trying to help those less fortunate than ourselves, and I go, oh please, that made me want to throw up. Do not use that language. Do not tolerate other folks using that language. All right, they're desperately poor, but that is not an equity of power situation, you see. Now, we're the ones who have resources. Well, that presents enough of a power differential to where we have to figure out a way to have some equity in it. If you establish something with students from ACC, if you establish something with folks in this federally funded housing, if you establish it, find leaders in those groups and put them in your church offices. Have desperately poor people be a part of your leadership teams. And for God's sakes, if you're designing ministry for the desperately poor, have some representation from the desperately poor to help you design the ministries. All of this just makes complete sense, but it's a little scary to us. It makes us a little anxious. We could talk more on that later. Keep going. Yeah, in worship particularly, this is the case, and I've dealt some with the second one. When we talk about emoting in worship and what it means to really feel the presence of God, and we had a jazz band and I wish I'd done this when Greg was here. We had a jazz band at Travis Park that I'd walk into that building and they'd start worship. They would start worship by marching down the hall. Did you hear were you there when they did? They'd start worship by marching down the hall in a drum parade. And that was the start up to worship. That was before the prelude. That'd get everybody thinking, oh, it's time to go to church. And they'd be banging those drums and going on in. Worship is something to be felt, not understood in time. John Wesley talked about the marriage of the head and the heart. And that means you're going to feel some experiences with that. So we would get marginalized folks, and we would have a really good jazz piece, and we'd have John Runnels or somebody would be up front with a tambourine and he'd be going around with his tambourine, and we saw it was not unusual for us to have a conga line going through the church with the music, a spontaneous eruption of a conga line in worship. All of this is to say, you don't have to do that, but be open. And don't be locked down. Don't be the frozen chosen. Don't be the kind of people that judge, somebody just raises their hand. You don't be that. And talk with that man back there. He knows music, and he knows what that jazz band was really like in there, and even played in it a time or two. We were lucky to have a real pro in there every now and again. But there were several pros who were in there. But pay attention to your music experience as it is your evocative part of what can give to you worship. Dignity, respect, equity, power. We've done that because the real practice is for all marginalized folks to practice dignity and respect. I would have homeless people come in and start their story with me because I was always the one that encountered some about being 6 foot and 220 pounds that they always pushed me kind of the front to do that. And so here I was, and I was doing it, and I love these guys too, and women guys, and they'd start in their story. I'd heard the story 100 times. I knew where the scam was coming from. I knew I was being hustled. I knew all of it. But there was some place where I decided, okay, how can I treat this with dignity and respect? Because every human being deserves that. And I decided, well, I can listen. It's predictable. It's like your kids coming in. Well, Daddy, I'm really, and you cut them off before they get too far. No, if I'm going to treat these strangers with dignity and respect, then I'm going to take the time to listen. So a lot of my time, other folks would think, well, that's wasted. No. Your job as a believer in Jesus Christ is to treat every human being with dignity and respect. That's your only job. That's what it means to be a disciple. So even if you know what's coming, give them the dignity and respect to hear them out. Now, many times at the end of that, I said, you got a plan, not my plan. We can get together and kind of figure out a plan together, but I'm just not going to go with yours as you design it. Oh, I thought this was a Christian church, and I just stomp right on out. But it's because wasn't going to do their plan. I would look at other folks and I'd sit there and I'd say, we're not going to do that, but you took a shot. Can't blame you for taking a shot, man. And so there's lots of ways to play with that. Dignity and respect for all human beings. I went in on a hospital visit just this last week because I'm doing some of that with Terrytown. And I went into the hospital visit, and as I go into the room, this elderly lady says, "Oh yeah, pull up a chair, pull up." I'm just, oh, sweet. I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm praying, I'm listening, and so I thought, okay, dignity and respect, dignity and respect, dignity and respect. So I sat down, and it just kind of goes a mantra. So I'm going to pay attention, and I was present. Now I was only present for about 10 minutes, and then I found a way to leave. But I was fully present during that 10 minutes. I want to make sure. Okay, go on to the next. Are we almost out? Yes, we're out. We're finished. Good. That's about all I figured that we could do in an hour and a half. So I hope that it hadn't been boring to you, and I hope somehow this just causes you to think. Now, remember, every piece of what we've done this morning is like 5 or 10 minutes of what we usually take a couple of 3 hours on. So, and there's a lot more involvement of congregational people too when we do that. I just wanted to get you out and get you thinking, trying to roll that around in your mind. So think about it and pray about it. Don, would you give us a prayer?
Well, the amoeba's not a bad thing. I'll borrow from Karen, but the first time I ever prayed in amoeba circles, she said circles are perfect, but none of God's people are perfect. So this circle is not perfect. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you so much for John and Karen's ministry. Lord Jesus, we thank you for you. We thank you for going to that cross. We thank you for being resurrected. And we thank you, Lord, for motivating and stimulating us to go out into this world, to make disciples, and to do what we can to transform. We ask that all this that has been shared here is wrapped around each and every one of us, and together we go out to do what we're called to do, to serve the marginalized and wash their feet and feed them and take care of them. Be open to it. We thank you for this time, and we ask for your presence this week. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.